Hello, everyone. This is Jose.
Hey, good morning, Danilo.
Good morning.
John, is there a place to post my slides, or should I just send it out to the group?
No, there is a place to post them, John. If you send them to me, or you can just drop them in.
Okay, do I need to do that now, or can I do that after the meeting?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, we'll craft a little document area. I think
Okay.
Anyway.
Good morning. Good afternoon.
Morning.
Boom. So does someone call this meeting to order, or do we just go?
Do we have quorum?
Let's see here. We do. I'm just taking a quick check as to.
Jonas going to join us?
No, I don't believe he will.
Okay.
I think he might be mid-Atlantic by now.
Okay. All right. God, I'd like to be mid-Atlantic.
You would?
I wouldn't. You'd be stuck in an airplane.
Well, no, I mean, like if there was no COVID, I'd like to be mid-Atlantic.
Exactly. Yes, I agree.
Yep. Okay, let's go ahead and get started. The only other person we would normally have here would be Pradeep. I don't know if he's joining us today, but it is 3 minutes past the hour.
All right, I think we can probably.
Yeah, let's go.
So we had 3 agenda items, I think, that were kind of major that we needed to close on. One was the presentation from John on the redfish overview. The second, we need to close on the proposals for ODIM. And then third, I think, what am I missing? There was yeah, so I also just posted the redfish API gaps, the draft list. So if we have time, we can talk about that.
That would be good to take a look at. Yeah.
Yeah, definitely.
We should start with the LF policy, Bob.
Oh, yeah, true. I am not prepared to display that, though. Hang on a second. I should be more organized. So let me see if I can find a copy of that. Oh, there we go. Thank you.
So just for everybody, right? This is standard operating procedure. Everyone had a chance to look at it. We can now remove it.
Thank you. All right. Yeah, so let's go ahead and move into our first agenda item with John. Are you prepared to share your screen and give us a little overview of redfish? Here we go. Thank you. Okay, the floor is yours.
Am I sharing?
You are. We can all see that. Thank you.
All right. So I have actually multiple positions. So PE within Intel I'm on the DMTF Redfish Forum. I'm also on the OCP Incubation Committee representative. Hence, there are a couple of slides about OCP in here, which interest. I've got allocated about 20 minutes for this meeting. I've probably got more slides. I can always come back and do any of this discussion again. But this is the highest level overview I think I can give you guys. Okay, first slide is exactly what Redfish is. So Redfish is and you guys have heard this before. Anyone can accelerate. I'm trying to do this for I think the least informed in the room. Is a modern RESTful interface for manageability. It uses cloud protocol structures, models, HTTPS and JSON. Basically, we wanted the data centers, and data centers said, stop giving us these proprietary or complex manageability interfaces where we have to dedicate people to learn all this stuff because we much rather you build something at the end of our tool chain so we can take someone off our main line, go have them do manageability, and then come back and do our mainline and make us some money. And right now, anyone who does manageability with our company sees it as a career dead end because they learn all the stuff that they can't apply anywhere else. So basically reduce manageability to resource URI, which is a URI path, and a JSON response format, which is the format of the response you get from an HTTP GET. In addition to that, we've made machine readable schemas which describe the actual JSON packet. So just like XML has XSL to describe its schema of the XML, we have schema to describe the content of the JSON. It's available in 3 formats: JSON schema, which is there a question? It was available in JSON schema and also Open API. And lastly, in OData CSDL, which is owned by the OASIS organization. So out of that, what you get is something very simplistic at the bottom, where you can go up to any browser, type in an HTTP request, it returns a JSON packet. You decode the JSON packet, find the string that you want, and you can go print yourself a serial number. So in this case, you've gone to system 1, and you've grabbed the entire JSON packet and extracted the name value pair for serial number. Any questions? Next slide is the an example of a JSON response that you would get. You get this from doing a GET on CS1. This is the URI path, and this is the JSON file. JSON file is basically split into simple properties, which are name value pairs, complex properties, which are basically structures of properties, and then subordinate resources, which are subordinate to it. So CS1 has subordinate resources for processor memory storage, Ethernet interfaces, associated resources, which are resources which are not subordinate to it. So managers and chassis will be associated resources, and this system would be managed by some manager, would exist in some chassis, and that relationship is described within the associated resources links. And then finally, you need to be able to act on the resource. So in this computer system, you can actually do a reset, and then so there's a pointer to the target, which is where you do your post in order to reset the system. And then there's a pointer to action info, which tells you information about this actual action. So you can actually pass it a reset method on whether you want to do a force reset, a shutdown, so on and so forth. So it gives you the possible values that you can pass within the packet that you send to it. Okay. Any questions? Okay. So that's basically Redfish in a nutshell is a URI path, and then the way packet that you get back. So if you want to get the processor 2, you just put that in your path. So CS1 has processors, and you just select processor 2, and it will return the JSON for the processor 2. So with that, what the DMTF did is it start describing as much of the system as they could. It ended with its expertise, which is basic computer systems. SNEA had an alliance partnership with us in order to extend the Redfish model to storage and network storage, and called it Swordfish. So there's a whole set of standards bodies that take Redfish and try to extend it to other management domains. But the problem with those is that all it does is it makes the model larger and larger and larger. And anyone trying to implement this looks at it and says, I need to implement all of this in order to be Redfish compliant. And the answer is no. So they say, how much of it do I need to implement? And for that, we go to prescriptive powers, because the DMTF is a descriptive power. It can describe, but it cannot prescribe. No one listens to the DMTF when we tell them you have to do something. The only way you can prescribe is to offer money or have a path to money. And so the ones that we've selected are Open Compute and the Open Group. And then in the chain, we'll talk about this later, is implementations. So once we prescribe something, someone can go attempt to implement it. And then the DMTF has worked on a back end to smooth out the test conformance of how you test this implementation once you've implemented it. And to do that, we've written a Redfish interop validator, which is available in open source. We allow the prescriptive power to write a profile. That profile is machine readable. It's because it's in JSON. It is read by the Redfish validator, the interop validator. The validator auto-generates all the tests as specified by this profile and runs the test against an implementation, any claimed implementation, and provides an output pass-fail in details on the failures. So what this allows is that if we go to a prescriptive power, we say, you guys can own the profile. You guys have the money, you guys know the path to money, go write yourself a profile. We can establish a backend to have you verify that some conformant implementation adheres to your profile, and then you can give it whatever logo you want to give it at that point. In addition to the interop validator, there are two additional tests, because what we did was we split the Redfish into, there's two parts of it. One is the interface, the ability to communicate across through HTTP, JSON, HTTPS, all that stuff. The other is the model itself. And that's where we've extended the model to other places. So the model is tested by the interop validator. The actual Redfish interface is checked by the service validator and conformance check. So the two test suites, which are also open source, which will test the communication independent of the actual model and test some of the services that are provided by Redfish. Any questions? So in going, any questions? Okay, so in going to OCP, what we established in OCP was that OCP's hardware management project has created a baseline hardware management profile. This is common manageability across all OCP platforms. And so you can now say, if I get an OCP platform, I can manage it at least at this baseline level. I can reset it, do various stuff on it. And then each individual project within OCP would extend this baseline profile for the particular platform. So servers would add server functionality, storage would add its, telco would add its additional functionality above the baseline for the system. And all these profiles, currently to date, only the baseline exists. Several profiles, there's a draft, and the other platform groups, project groups are all writing profiles or looking at profiles for theirs. So in their design documents, they can just reference the baseline saying, hey, we haven't got time, just do the baseline, or they can say, we've actually extended the baseline to a storage profile. You should go adhere to this one in particular. Any questions? This was decided 2 years ago, and now the decision was made public directionally 2 years ago, and they're only now trying to force it upon or increase the necessity to implement this on OCP platforms. And the reason that we went to OCP is they have a path to money. And I'm not going to talk about this entire slide, but these are the ways you contribute to OCP. But most important is this OCP marketplace, because things that adhere to OCP get dropped in the marketplace, are allowed to be in the marketplace, and therefore it can be purchased by data centers, whether they're OCP ready or not. OCP ready is yet another emblem that they put on there. So we're way back here in design specifications specifying a profile. The profile itself is contributed to DMTF, and that is how manufacturers now can produce things that adhere to specifications, get OCP inspired, OCP accepted monikers on them, and then get placed in the marketplace and then get bought. So this is the path to money, and that's why OCP has prescriptive power, because they can mandate this, and people will follow. And a lot of people from OCP summits come to the Redfish booth because it's mentioned throughout OCP as you have to go adhere to this at some point. Any questions? All right, so within OCP, there's an open RMC subproject, which
Sorry.
yes.
John, yeah, sorry, I meant to ask a couple of slides back then. Maybe I missed this, but you know, you were saying that the other profiles outside of compute weren't finished. Is there plans to do that, or did I miss that you weren't going to do that anymore?
No, there are plans to do that. It's had to do with, as a hardware management project within an OCP, I could mandate the baseline. Each individual community, server community, would have to provide some interest in creating a profile for their organization. And so up to this point, some have taken stabs at it, but they haven't actually produced any, which are released at 1.0. So they've been kind of mandated within an internal strategic project within the OCP to start looking at profiles that they need to go reference. So in this document, we now have a mandate which is going through that all design specifications being accepted going to OCP has to have a statement about Redfish profile, right? And so they can either say you shall have the baseline, or it can say you shall have a server profile if you've created one, but you got to have at least a line which says profile, and that is a question we will ask at every design review that comes in through the incubation committee.
Gotcha. All right, but there's no plans to have storage or networking profiles as yet.
Correct. So storage, SNIA, as I mentioned, has swordfish profiles, and they've actually gone into the storage project, and they've presented their set of profiles. But they haven't quite moved forward on it. And so there's this issue of these communities understand storage, they don't understand Redfish. And so now there's an agreement between hardware management that we will go into any group and work with them, because we have the Redfish expertise to do a profile for the particular platform, because they say they want to, but they haven't got time to go figure out Redfish.
Gotcha.
So I think now with this forcing function in the specifications, they're forced to go take a look at whether baseline is sufficient or whether they need to actually extend beyond the baseline.
Yeah, interesting.
Okay. All right. So RMC. So RMC is Rack Manager controller. So what the CTO of OCP came to me and said, I think we've got onboard figured out. We got the firmware. It's going to be open sourced on the open BMC. Our next problem is going to be up here with the Rack Manager. So we're going to go with all OCP platforms will expose Redfish. So how do I deal with a Rack Manager that needs to manage multiple systems, which are OCP platforms? And so he said, we can't allow this to fracture. OpenBMC fractured. It had existed for 2 years before all the groups kind of corralled them together and finally made it a single project. If we allow this to fracture, we're going to be stuck in the same thing. OCP wants to be a first mover. We're going to move into this space and offer up an open source Rack Manager. And hopefully we can prevent the industry from fracturing too much by having this already available and being owned by OCP.
Just a
yes.
quick question. If you look at the picture on the right, the bottom part of it, looks remarkably like what we're trying to do in ODIM, at least in terms of the interfaces, right?
Right.
Is This is a conversation maybe we need to have with the OpenRMC. I think it would be good to understand if they can leverage, if there's a way to leverage the implementation, like an aggregation service to do the bottom half or the bottom part of the diagram.
Right. So two things about the RMC. One is we're only concerned about the northbound interface, and then southbound requirements. So if we say you can reset a full rack, then the southbound requirement is that I'd be able to reset every component in the rack. Right. So I don't care whether those requirements are implemented by Redfish, it's an OCP platform, or by one of the older technologies. As long as from rack level, I can issue a reset of the rack. The second is as an OCP profile, I've set the strategy of setting the bar fairly low in order so more people can actually jump over this barrier and get on stage and say, I support this way of moving. That's what we did with the original baseline and servers, so that we set the bar low. So more people could get over and say, oh, this is simple. We can get over it. We understand this entire Redfish process and running the test suite to verify the profile. This is all good. And once we did that, we were going to crank up the bar higher up. So since OCP is just starting, its bar is fairly low. So I assume this bar is far lower than anything this organization, ODIM, will want to see on a platform. It can begin to influence what is in here, what is on this northbound interface. But if you look at the northbound interface, it's fairly low. What we did
So John,
yes.
I have a comment to what Alex said. This is Rafał Steina, Intel. First of all, on the note of the reuse from the OpenRMC to the ODIM, I think it's not obvious that all the, let's say, aggregation functions will be realized in the OpenRMC firmware, right? It has to detect the topology and expose topology of the servers. It has to allow control of the rack, but the OpenRMC firmware doesn't have to expose all the assets, right, within the servers.
Correct. And one of the great learnings that I found in running this for the first 6 months was that people have very different ideas of what a rack manager should do. So at one end of the spectrum, you have the person who says, oh, the rack manager should abstract everything below it. I should deal with the rack manager as a single entity. It should do whatever I want invisibly. And it just gives me an abstraction. At the other end of the spectrum, they say, oh, no, I just want the rack manager to tell me what the system is. I interact directly with the system. So the only time I talk to a rack manager is when I can't manage the system. I go to rack manager, go reset the thing. And when it comes back up, I go manage the system. So I want no abstraction. So we debated that for a long time. So being a community project, both of those areas had to be understood and dealt with. And that's another reason why the bar is low, in order to satisfy everybody. That some people just wanted the rack manager to reboot the system. They didn't want abstraction. They said abstraction just prevents us from doing our work. So you get into a lot of politics or technical perspectives in OpenRMC that I don't think you would get into within ODIM. The second thing is that now that we've done, we're about to release the northbound API version 1.0, the two vectors that we're about to go. One is one vector, which is the RMC should only deal with power and thermal. So there's this large power and thermal group that want to extend it that way, which is submersion cooling, all that stuff needs to be dealt with, 48 volt, all that stuff, right? Which is the RMC, and then the other one, which is the higher level of abstraction, which would bring in the aggregation model. So there's still battles being dealt with, even at this low level, but I don't think ODIM wants to quite get into. Does that make sense? Okay, so I've heard a lot of mention about OpenRMC, but OpenRMC has its own storming, forming issues as it tries to roll itself out and become relevant. Because at first, it only asks for software contributions, right? It says, give us software contributions for rack managers. We'll go pick the winner and or integrate all this stuff. And the contributors contributed, and they said, we have no interest in any type of integration. We have our own proprietary stuff. So why we want to participate? So I actually changed the model and said, fine, we're only going to take bundle solutions. You submit me a piece of RMC hardware and make its firmware buildable. And that's what we'll worry about. So it's still moving, guys. All right. Any more questions? That's all I'm going to talk about OCP. All right. So if I go back to the compute model, what can I do? So here are kind of all the management functions. Red is what I consider unique functionality that Redfish provides that prior interfaces did not provide, namely firmware update and asynchronous communications. You can pub sub. And then the ability to describe entire hierarchies of systems, where other ones, older technology was only a single point system that you could manage, and you cannot see it in its larger hierarchy, which is why this is Redfish is useful for managing a rack. And then composition, the ability to create or construct or demand a composition of aggregate parts, of disaggregate parts. Any questions? Okay, so when you look at Redfish, before we go into the model, there's some modeling which exists across the entire Redfish service, and that is they have a particular service for accounts, for event service, which is for async. Service sent eventing is what is currently used for streaming because it was a IEEE standard. Yeah, either IEEE or IETF standard. Session services for connections to Redfish service, so when you have more than one connection to the Redfish service. Tasks, which are tasks created by the Redfish service itself in doing something. If something takes a long time, it'll launch a task. Job service, which is something that the user creates a job, which can be done now or sometime in the future. Update service, which is for inventory update, other software inventory. Certificates, so you can have certificates on components or for the entire system. Composition, which I mentioned before, and then aggregation, which is how do I manage groups of resources as a single entity. So we have collections, but collections are defined, they're basically everything. And so you want to create some subset that you can go manage. And so we allow persistent and non-persistent groups. Any questions? Again, all these may exist, and only the profile will tell you which ones have to exist. So with that, this is the model of Redfish and kind of how you wander down the tree. From service root, you get to all your services. And then the three big collections are systems, chassis, and managers. Chassis is sheet metal, which is a physical view, a logical view of the system itself, which has processors, memory, storage, Ethernet. Chassis only have power and thermal, and then managers, which manage and can be placed in some hierarchy, which is our BMC, which everyone knows and loves. It has, of course, its own network protocol, and it's where all the log services reside. Any questions? All right. So the three models which I think of interest to this group, and I think, yeah, I'm 30 minutes in, so I'll just look at this very quickly. So the fabric model, Redfish client manages the connectivity between components and systems. So that can be used to define how we create the connection with an ODIM. The aggregation model, which I mentioned before. So these groups can be temporary or persistent. They're temporary if the grouping is understood by the orchestrator, and they're persistent only if the orchestrator wants to delegate the understanding of a group to the Redfish service. And then because if you don't, then every time you issue a command to Redfish, you have to tell it what its group is again, because with temporary, it forgets what the group is the minute you issue a command. And then composability, which is the ability to compose systems. And then the next is,
you guys are using, just to be sure, you guys were using anything from the SIM model, the core SIM model for system composition?
no.
Okay.
The concept, one I believe the major concept between SIM and Redfish is SIM is a highly technical model, and you need to understand a whole lot about SIM modeling to understand it. Redfish is dealt with from a user perspective. It starts with what the user wants, and we will make modifications based on making the user experience better and forcing pain on the model, because we deal with that pain within the Redfish forum,
Okay.
in order to make the user experience easier. Okay. All right. So I'm not going to go into the fragment model or the aggregation model. I will go to the background, which is basically these are all the Redfish tools which are in open source. So everything in blue. So we pushed everything out there so that people can reuse it and utilize it as they see fit. And I think that's it, unless you want to come back to this at the end.
I think this is a good start. So I posted the list of potential enhancements to Redfish earlier today. At the end of this meeting, if we have time, we should look at that and see, maybe the slide where you talk about what you can do with Redfish today, I think would be most appropriate for that discussion. So.
John, a question.
Yes.
Thomas Friedberg from Ericsson. You said that, or at least I recognize that you said that you could have a model, or you could have Redfish implementation being persistent or temporary, and you could leave to the Redfish implementation to be persistent.
Oh, I was mentioning that about grouping. So when you define a group within Redfish and you want to operate on a group, you can have the group understood by the orchestrator. So it says, I know all the groups, I have scope, I understand everything. I want you to reboot these 5 systems. So
the orchestrator would be external to Redfish.
Exactly.
So.
Yeah. And then the Redfish would get this and it would reboot your 5 systems. It totally forget about your 5 systems because it was temporary. And you'll come back again and say, oh God, I want to go do something else in these 5 systems. So Redfish has the ability to create a persistent group, which is called an aggregate, where you say, okay, I'm going to define an aggregate and within the model. And so these 5 groups these 5 systems will exist even after my command. So I can come back and say, reboot them. And then I can say, go set the boot path for these 5. And then I can say, go boot these 5. But that's the persistency, is the notion of groups, because the battle I've always seen between orchestrators and managers like Redfish is who owns the group. Because if Redfish tried to say, we have this group concept and whatever, all orchestrators would start saying, you guys have no understanding of groups. You guys don't have scope. You don't understand the data center. We up here understand the data center, and we should be the last arbiter of what constitutes a group.
Sure, fully recognize the battle there.
Yeah, exactly. So I said we'll have it both ways. We'll let them do the group until they get tired of it, right?
Yeah,
and then we'll have a mechanism to give us a group.
But I mean, one notion there is that, I mean, if Redfish interface will be the mediator who actually owns a resource, whatever, a composed resource or whatever, or an aggregate, then it's imperative that Redfish in itself could persist data and stand by those data, because there will be multiple different orchestrators that potentially will try to get whatever resources they can to play with, and then think that they belong to those orchestrators.
Right.
And the question I then have is, do you have all the type of resiliency, backup, restore, and all these kind of things that you need to do system management of whenever you have a persistent object, so that you can restore whatever states that you might have lost with a piece of hardware that was your end point of the Redfish system actually died on you. Where is that specified?
That would be an implementation issue of whether all that stuff is persistent. And no, I don't believe we have everything. And one of the battles with getting this aggregation model out was that some people wanted everything explained. And I told them, DMTF doesn't understand this enough, guys. We have to get this model out so people can look at it and tell us what we're missing and have us fix it, right? Because if we don't get this model out there, then the notion of grouping will never get understood and will never get tested on Redfish. So we released work in progress, and then we finally released it in a spec so that people could tell us what was missing in properties and what behavior needs to be had in order on Redfish side for persistence in order for this to occur, right? So the implementation of what happens when a Redfish service resets is an implementation issue, and the presumption is that when you reset, you return with all your resources intact from the last time from when you went down.
Yeah.
That's a mandate. That's a mandate of that's a prescriptive mandate, right?
Okay. Yeah. I think that feels like a very important thing to sort out in all the different implementations that you do based on Redfish or whatever ODIM and so on and so forth. Of what is the persistency model? Who has the ownership of certain objects inside the model?
Right, and that's where the DMTF stands by. We define interfaces. We don't define implementation. We cannot favor an implementation. So whether something is persistent is an implementation issue. And the prescriptor needs to say, all your Redfish services need to be fully persistent and backed up, right?
But there need to be some basic constructs in the interfaces to support.
Right. And if they would tell us, what those constructs need to be, we can add those constructs to the interface.
Yeah,
I mean, when we come later on talking about, some of the things that Jonas and others talked about when it comes to the networking model and wanting that to be the wanted state, then I think it's very, very important that we take up those discussions in there as well, because persistency will probably play an important role in that.
Right.
Okay, thanks.
John, Martin, this is a question on that grouping again. John, can you help on a use case or an example for a non-persistent or temporary grouping? This is Jose from AMI.
Wow, there's lots of them. See, I see grouping as the orchestrator wants to delegate the responsibility or notion of a group to Redfish service. It may a group may be it's got some alarm somewhere in the data center. Let's figure out what that alarm is. Let's figure out it has these 5 systems that are affected. It wants to go do something to those 5 systems, but that's it. It takes them offline, right? So it issues whatever command to shut the systems down, and it'll send some work order to someone to go fix them, but that's it. It doesn't need to understand the group at all. It doesn't need to delegate knowledge of the group to a Redfish service, so it's temporary.
Okay. That explains. Martin, on the ODIM level, the aggregator, does it support both temporary and permanent grouping, or are we sticking to permanent groups alone?
So the current aggregation function doesn't fully support, so HP's implementation of it doesn't fully support the latest aggregation spec. So okay. we have plans to add that, but we plan to support it fully. So and obviously it'll be out in open source, so others can contribute to it, and maybe it's one thing we should discuss with Intel as well in terms of them potentially contributing there as well.
Okay.
But we kind of support the previous because the aggregation service came out. We built an implementation of it before the standard came out, simply because one didn't exist. But that's something that we have plans to rectify.
Okay, thank you, John. Thank you, Martin. Yeah. So we can move on to the next topic. Alex, you wanted to review?
Yes, I think one of the things we need to do is kind of close on the two proposals that Jonas submitted for enhancements. The first one, I think we've reviewed already 2 weeks ago. Last week we talked through let me actually share, so this way everybody.
Yeah, that would be good.
What we're doing.
I was about to ask.
So last week we talked extensively about the plugin service, and that had been posted for a while.
Well, yeah. So just a sec. I need to. So here we go. Can you guys see?
Yeah.
It's coming up. Yep.
No idea why. It says that I'm sharing a screen, so.
Yeah, so we can see the main landing page.
Right. So last time we spoke, let me make this larger so people can. We had these two proposals. The first one was about the update service for the firmware. I think that was approved already, but we said that we would give another week to register any issues, complaints, or whatnot. The second one was for a plugin for unmanaged racks, so we can accurately create the deployment topology. And we had a pretty good discussion last time. At least from my perspective, I think I kind of addressed all of my concerns, or at least I understand why things are the way they are. I don't know if anybody else has any additional comments on this plugin. I'll just display it. So you guys can kind of see what we're talking about. Just a quick overview for those of you who have not seen this before. I think this may be a good, temporary or, well, this is necessary given how things are today. But one thing we may want to consider is we still need to discuss, how topologies beyond how logical topologies can be discovered or inferred or defined as well. So one of the gaps that we identified was the ability to kind of model ODIM deployments across multiple data centers and multiple locations. And that also has, I think, we'll have a need to introduce additional quote unquote plugins that know how to aggregate and compose resources and group resources based on specific location or whatnot. So that's something that we still need to do. But for the time being, just wanted to circle back and see if there were any other issues with this proposal. If not, then we will give it the go-ahead, and if there's still some residual questions or issues, you still have an opportunity to ask, but at least we would mark it as approved so that the folks can continue doing what they're doing.
Okay, good with me.
If there's nothing there, then we should, let's vote officially as we did with the first one in the wiki. So
In the chat, you mean?
in the chat, yes.
Yes.
We
Okay.
usually do. So please, those companies that are officially registered as participating, please. Bob, do you want to, let me just vote.
Yeah, I'm opening the chat here.
I'm typing already, so vote to approve unmanaged rack plugin work. So I've registered the Intel vote. Daniel, Joe, Martin.
Yeah, you could. Well, HP's vote is yes.
Of course, yes, but
Strangely.
for the record, we just, don't want to.
No, of course. But sorry, where do I?
It's in the chat. In the chat, you'll see a. Oops, I think I sent it.
Yeah. So Daniel here, I don't see any chat.
Yeah, I'm not seeing anything. So
I know, and I sent it to John instead of everybody.
oh, okay, there we go.
See it?
Now we see that.
And now you guys can see the Intel vote. I can't spell today.
There we go.
Okay, great.
And we only have is it 5 companies officially in there?
Yes, so in Tieto, I think Daniel, you accidentally sent it to me instead of to everybody, but I'll just cut and paste into the thing. So, oops, I don't know what's going on. Right. All right, Bob, so in your minutes, you can record that we are good. And what I will do is I'll just change the page right away so that we can say it's approved.
Right.
Right.
And
I'm taking that down. Yep. Thank you, everyone. Measure passed. Okay. And as you said, Alex, if people read this further and have further comments, of course you can still do that.
yeah, and I think if once we have the discussion, it'll be interesting to see how we resolve some of the other modeling issues that we currently don't have.
Thank you, William.
So I've made the update. And
okay, do we want to move on then to the
yes.
the third topic?
Yes, let me do the updates. Yes, let's do that. So,
and I did not see that post. Did you just post that before the meeting, Alex?
yes, it's sitting in a page called DMTF Redfish Enhancements. What I didn't do is anchor it anywhere, so you can't, you have to go and use the page tree to find it, but it's there. So let me just, share the screen again, and
that would be good. Yeah. Yeah, I have some problems myself sometimes with Confluence, and It doesn't always show what I want it to show.
So, and again, this is a draft list. This is something we need to vet and kind of maybe expand and or contract or redefine in terms of priorities. The numbering is just meant to be able to identify things in an easier way. So just going down the list, maybe I can introduce what we thought would be useful. And then I don't know how much time we have. Okay, 10 minutes. We can at least introduce things and give everybody some context. So one of the things that we have been talking about in some of the diagrams that we've been showing to different folks is this notion of an ODIM hierarchy, right? Where we can create administrative domains and kind of be able to manage groupings of resources in different locations, potentially geographically distributed. At the end of the day, all of that has to be aggregated up to an end-to-end service view or to end-to-end infrastructure view. And we need to understand, what's the right way to model these multi-site deployments and what we need to do in terms of the model. Now, this goes beyond the basic GPS coordinates or something along those lines. This, it may be useful to actually be able to define the structure of the data center, including locations, because data centers are designed in different ways, and I can easily see how you can use the aggregation service to manage two sides of a data center, or maybe two data centers at the same location. You want to be able to do groupings and adjustments on those groupings based on that. So that's one item that we should talk about, I believe. Second one, I think we need to explore some power management extensions. There's an existing, I think, specification for that, but I think there's some enhancements that we may want to make, especially given the new capabilities of at least the Intel processors that are out there. Multi-tenancy support, this goes back to what Thomas said. Again, if we just want to make sure that there's sufficient constructs in there to be able to support management of the infrastructure across different lines of business, for example, so that those lines of business could have their own specific views of what the infrastructure is and be able to change it. Plus, there will always need to be an IT kind of global view of things, but it would be good to be able to define who the different tenants are that are going to manage the sum total of the entire infrastructure deployment, and what they would, what privileges and roles that would entail. So I think this might be tied to the security model that exists. Hardware acceleration modeling, and when I say modeling, I mean being able to discover different types of acceleration devices, and this list doesn't even include, all the great stuff that, you see in the press about DPUs and other things, but this is a starter set. And the idea here is to just make sure that whichever way we express these types of devices, it's extensible and can be profiled the right way. So there were three that we identified initially from the Intel side. Smart NICs would be priority one. FPGAs and GPUs, I think there's already existing work to support that, at least initially. But we would want to make sure that, again, we make things as extensible as possible and potentially accelerate the when I say extensible, I mean do not necessarily require specification changes every time a new device is introduced. If there's a way to do that, that would be ideal. The fifth item is about hardware platform capabilities. There's a lot of orchestration engines that want to know specific capabilities of the underlying CPU, memory and storage subsystems inside the platform in order to create more more accurate placements of network services and VNFs. ONAP is one example of something like that. And so if we can create a good model for that to be exposed out of band to the orchestration engines, I think some of them would support and benefit from that. I put down 6 as analytics support. One of the things that, from our perspective is important is sort of to enrich, the way the telemetry is exposed and in some cases be able to support local analysis of that telemetry within the platform in addition to just propagating it upstream. So kind of having these embedded analytics capabilities would be very useful. And we would probably propose some additional interfaces to support that concept. And then number 7 has to do with telemetry. Again, the idea is to kind of try to create as much normative sort of behavior as possible in terms of, not only how the data is exchanged over, what particular schema is used to represent it, like JSON, for example, but, let's make sure we can support, it's friendly to all the streaming protocols and existing data collection mechanisms that exist already in different environments. For example, in Kubernetes, the use of Prometheus is pretty commonplace, and on the edge as well. We just want to make sure that A, things are compatible with that. B, we make, again, things more extensible and kind of define what is the base set of information that you have to specify. Maybe it's profiled, and then also specify how somebody would supply additional information and how they would describe what it is and what the actual content looks like in terms of the format. And then the last piece, number 8, security enhancements. Maybe security is a bad word, but the 3 use cases that we are suggesting here is the secure onboarding of hardware, and being able to do remote attestation of hardware, as well as secure wipe where appropriate. As I said, with the exception of number 4, there's no judgment or preference right now in terms of priorities. I think we should discuss this list, see if there's anything to add or subtract or whatever we need to do. And then potentially we can talk about, how we start down the path of defining these extensions.
Very good. So I'd like to just give folks an action item to review these, think about these, think about which ones you might care about, and we could go through it. We could put this as an agenda item for next week for further discussion on. We could even communicate over the list, perhaps, on which ones people would like to discuss. Perhaps I think that would be a good proposal too. Yeah. Otherwise, we'll take a stab at. Alex can take a stab at bringing up the ones that he likes or to discuss most or thinks are most important. But I think
I would be very interested in some feedback from Red Hat, Ericsson, anybody else who has upstream Kubernetes, anyone who has upstream kind of orchestration functionality. A lot of these enhancements are meant to enrich the view of the world. So. So that would be good if we can have a little bit of a discussion next week.
Yeah, no, I'd like to do that. And I mean, and I want to say we on the HPE side, there's a bunch of enhancements that we're looking at that aren't on this list as well. So, so we'll make sure. Yeah, sorry, I was going to say. So by the time we have a call next week, we'll update this and provide those as well.
Great.
Comment on the ones that are there.
Excellent. And, I'm going to, after this meeting is over, I'm probably going to refactor how the list is presented and put it more into a table form so we can add additional columns of information as opposed to.
Yeah, great. Well, okay, so once you've done that, then we'll add
Yeah.
some more to it then.
Yes. So
Okay, we are at the top of the hour, folks.
okay. So for next week, I think what we've teed up is the discussion around this topic. One other thing that we've been kind of lagging behind on is sort of the processes around project reviews, submissions, and all that. So far, we've just kind of been working on enhancements, but and we have an informal agreement around project proposals and whatnot. But I think we need to start creating how do you get involved kind of section that tells people how to participate. So maybe we can talk about some of that material next week as well.
Sure, I'll note that. All right, very good. And as always, use the list this week if you have any questions or comments or agenda items for next week that you'd like to propose.
Yeah, we'll do.
Other than that, we will conclude the meeting.
Okay, thanks
Very
all.
good. Thank you very much.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you, everyone. Bye, guys.
Thank you.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
And hey, Jim, does this recording automatically stop when we close the meeting?
Don't close it yet because I'm trying to save the chat.
Okay.
Okay. I did save the chat, so now you can add in, the people who've joined the meeting and all that. I'll send that to you, Bob.
Okay, very good. I'm actually not sure how I don't see the control here for the managing the recording, but I just see the record button, which it's already showing recording up in the left, which was I think set up by Jim Baker is automatically happening.
I don't know what that looks like. I think we're late for the next.
Yeah, we got to get to the next. I think it just closes automatically.